Hello everyone, my name is Mpati Kwena and I'm going to be showing you my brain model for the OPV online badge activity 1. In production of my brain model, I've used Play-Doh or molding clay as well as coffee granules. In the main parts, I've used red for the cerebrum, green for the cerebellum, yellow for the temporal lobe, and blue for the spinal cord. This is a cross section of the brain because it seemed like it would be the easiest one to explain, as it's less ambiguous than a full brain. During production, I've learned 3 very interesting concepts. The first concept was the fact that simplicity is often the ultimate sophistication in finding solutions, because I've used several models. I've been designing several models which were ambiguous, but then ultimately I resulted using clay as it was the least troublesome in designing the brain. And the second aspect would be that I've also learned that I've been having a wrong perception about the brain and its functions all this time. Firstly was the confusion between the cerebrum and the cerebellum. I've read that the cerebellum is in fact responsible for the balance and other cognitive functions in the body, whereas the cerebrum is the main center of thought processes, and I've been mixing them up my entire life basically, because I thought that the cerebrum was in fact the one that occupied most of the brain and had the most gray matter, whereas it is in fact the cerebrum which occupied most of the brain. And the third one, which is quite surprising, is that I thought that the frontal lobe had no important function at all, only to find out that it is responsible for most of our behavior and emotions. And I often thought that all this time it was just a node standing there taking up most of our brain space. But then it turns out that it is actually responsible for how we behave. And I had given the function of how we behave to the cerebrum because it is responsible for higher thought processes. So I also thought that it was in fact also responsible for behavior. And one of the most confusing questions I have is the fact that while I was reading my coursework, it was said that infants having 3 years have billions more synapses than us. So I was wondering if in fact does them having more synapses in their brain mean that they process information faster, or are their brains faster than an average adult's brain? Because it's quite impeccable how the increase of synapses is at their age. I mean, it rises exponentially. It rises very exponentially. And does the loss of synapses also mean that our brains get slower as we age? Because we tend to go down at the age of 18. Our synapses start to I can't say decay, but then they do decrease. And another question is, how much information can we actually store in our brains? Because over time we tend to forget. And does forgotten information mean that it's lost information? Those are the questions that have risen while I was busy in this chapter of celebrating the brain. And an aspect that I found to be very interesting above everything else was the fact that we could treat our brains as muscles, which I have over the past few weeks. I've been getting exposed to new environments, reading more, and I have seen an improvement actually in my schoolwork in terms of memory retention. I've been getting sucked into my coursework lately, and I don't forget what I've been studying. That's one of the concepts that really, really amaze me at this point.